Playing Nirvana.
The Cobain 50.
Nirvana.
Kurt Cobain's top 50 albums.
Nirvana.
From listener-powered KEXP.
This is the Cobain 50 from listener-powered KEXP. I'm Dusty Henry.
And I'm Martin Douglas. This week, Janice Headley dives into the album She Hangs Brightly by Mazzy Star, which dropped in 1990.
Really glad we could time this out with a KEXP, our celebration of Latin Heritage Month, which extends from September 15th to October 15th, celebrating Latin music and artists from all around the globe all month long. Mazzy Star, of course, in that with Hope Sandoval, the icon of Mexican-American heritage, so near and dear to my heart and one of the most iconic, enigmatic vocalists of her generation.
We use the term formative a lot on this series, and I feel as though Mazzy Star is a key formative influence for our generation. We're going to talk all about that right now.
Let's fade into it.
Without further ado, here's Janice Headley diving into She Hangs Brightly by Mazzy Star.
Of all the 50 favorite albums scribbled in Kurt Cobain's journals, Mazzy Star's 1992 debut LP, She Hangs Brightly, might seem like a surprising inclusion. The California-based group, led by songwriters Hope Sandoval and David Roback, are best known for their 1994 hit single, Fade Into You, their biggest mainstream hit, hitting number 3 on the U.S. Billboard Modern Rock charts and peaking at number 44 on the Billboard Hot 100.
Fade into you. Strange you left me.
It was also incredibly overused in TV and film, soundtracking scenes in Starship Troopers, CSI New York, Desperate Housewives, and Gilmore Girls, just to name a very, very few.
Hey, if I kiss you, is a nun gonna come out and boot me out of here?
It's not a Catholic school.
So I can kiss you.
Yeah, you can kiss me.
But the album we're focusing on today predates all of that. In the early 80s, the Los Angeles music scene began tapping into their roots for inspiration, combining the psychedelic guitars of the past with the present-day energy of punk. The genre was termed the Paisley Underground and included bands like the Dream Syndicate, Green on Red, and Rain Parade, a band led by vocalist, guitarist, and songwriter David Roback. David and his brother Steven had previously been in a band called The Unconscious with their across-the-street neighbor, Susanna Hoffs, who later went on to form the Bangles.
I love it in your room at night. You're the only one who gets through to me. In the warm glow of the candlelight. Oh, I wonder what you're gonna do to me.
While The Unconscious never released any music, Susanna and David reunited in the Paisley Underground supergroup Rainy Day, which featured members of their respective bands, as well as the Dream Syndicate, Salvation Army, and the 3 O'Clock. Here's Susanna on the Record Store Day podcast in 2020.
And I think the idea of the band as an art project was sort of how I approached it. And that's why it was so amazing that David and I had this birth of our own first, kind of group there, which never really made an album, but we ended up influencing each other's bands as we went on. And the Rainy Day record was kind of the recording that most expressed what our early moments in Berkeley collaborating sounded like.
You can already hear echoes of what would become Mazzy Star begin to shape with Rainy Day's slower-paced approach to Bob Dylan's 1964 single, I'll Keep It With Mine.
Come on, give it to me. I'll keep it with mine.
As for Rain Parade, the band truly helped to solidify the sound of the Paisley Underground with their 1983 debut album, Emergency Third Rail Power Trip, which famed rock critic Jim DeRogatis called, quote, not only the best album from any of the Paisley Underground bands, it ranks with the best psychedelic rock efforts from any era, end quote.
When I'm lying down, I look around, and I see you.
In a 2015 interview with Uncut Magazine, Steve Wynn of the Dream Syndicate added, quote, the Rain Parade were as Paisley as the Paisley Underground got. Of all the bands in the scene, all of us were coming from a more punk rock background. But the Rain Parade weren't like that. They were happy just to be floating and gentle and trippy. Pink Floyd and the Byrds. Who didn't love that? End quote. One of the many fans of Rain Parade was a 15-year-old girl named Hope Sandoval. As she told Newsweek in 2013, quote, the most amazing live shows that I've seen were Rain Parade shows, end quote. Hope grew up in East LA in the Mara Villa neighborhood, raised by Mexican-American parents. She had one sibling and 7 half-siblings, which allowed her to get away with things kids in smaller families might not have been able to. As Hope told The Telegraph in 2001, quote, it's just like anybody else. Some people, most people, don't want to go to school. I was just somebody who got away with it. There wasn't really anyone watching, end quote. She began skipping class and staying out late to see bands. She was 13 when she fell in love with the Rolling Stones. One song in particular caught her ear, the 1966 song Goin' Home, which closed out the U.S. edition of the band's 4th album, Aftermath.
I'm going home. I'm going home. I'm going home. I'm going home.
Hope and her best friend, Sylvia Gomez, took this song title as the name for their band, Going Home. A simple acoustic folk duo with Sylvia on guitar and Hope on vocals.
Nothing from something was a real great thing. Trying to be someone, maybe even trying to be something. Looking through the world with those big black eyes. Where did you run to, baby? Where did you hide?
Despite their folkier sound, they landed opening slots for Sonic Youth and the Minutemen. As Hope told Newsweek, quote, it was intimidating. Everybody sat down. It was surprising, but they really liked it, end quote. Sylvia gave David Roback a cassette copy of their home-recorded demo after a Rain Parade show in 1983, and he was immediately drawn to Hope's unique, languid vocal style. Originally, the following demo that was recorded and produced by David was only given to people the band knew. Nowadays, you can find ripped copies on YouTube. The album was never officially released. But through this project, David and Hope found a musical soulmate in the other. Both musicians were introverted, with a deep passion for music. Here they are on Australia's Radio J in 2018.
Hope, we went into a recording studio, Hope and her partner, Sylvia Gomez. They had a band called Going Home, and I thought they were so amazing. I just said, we've got to go into a studio. And so we went into a studio in Venice, California, and a place called Radio Tokyo. And we recorded all sorts of interesting they performed as I was producing, but it was amazing, and it was very inspiring, and that eventually led to us working together.
Yeah, I mean, half the time, we don't even really need to speak to each other. We use telepathy. we just know what each other is thinking.
We don't really have a process that needs to be verbalized between the two of us. We just really basically do what we like, and that's been the way it's always been, and what turns us on, and what we feel emotionally connected to. That's what we like to do.
After the release of Rain Parade's debut album, David left the band and formed the duo Opal with Kendra Smith, the former bassist for the Dream Syndicate.
Our love is gone. Our love is gone. Into the night. Into the night.
When Kendra left Opal in the middle of a European tour supporting the Jesus and Mary chain, David asked Hope to come finish the tour in her place. David's contract with Rough Trade Records included an album from Opal, but Hope felt unsatisfied recording songs that had been written by Kendra and David. She suggested they start anew, and thus Mazzy Star was formed. They quickly composed and recorded 7 new tracks in Hyde Street Studios in San Francisco that would comprise their debut album, She Hangs Brightly. One of the included tracks was a Going Home original titled Give You My Lovin'.
Give you my lovin', 7 days a week. I'll be a honey if you'll be sweet.
And here's the Mazzy Star version.
I know I'm the only one for you. I know that you think this is not true. Man says it's raining outside. I'll be out there in a little while.
In 1988, Nirvana covered the song Love Buzz, originally recorded by Dutch rock band Shocking Blue in 1969.
Can't you hear my love buzz? Can't you hear my love buzz?
On She Hangs Brightly, Mazzy Star also turned out a cover from an obscure European band called Slap Happy, covering their song Blue Flower.
Superstar in your own private movie. I wanna just for my heart. But I'm no fool. I know you're cool. I never really wanted your heart.
She Hangs Brightly also includes a cover of the blues song I'm Sailin', originally recorded in 1971 by Memphis Minnie.
I'm sailing, sailing, place I never seen.
That's way down south, sweet old New Orleans.
Nirvana also covered a blues classic on their MTV Unplugged performance, giving their take on Lead Belly's 1944 version of the standard, Where Did You Sleep Last Night?
My girl, don't lie to me. Tell me, where did you sleep last night?
In the plans, where the sun don't ever shine, I would shiver the whole night through.
She Hangs Brightly includes one song that predates Mazzy Star, a leftover from David's writing sessions with Kendra for Opal, the very Doors-inspired Ghost Highway.
You're a ghost on the highway, and I love you forever. Ghost on the highway, and I love you forever. Forever and ever.
There's also a song that's sort of a proto-Fade Into You, the single Be My Angel.
They say it's me that makes you do things you might not have done if I was away, and that it's me It likes to talk to and watches you as you walk away. Don't say it's useless.
It's not known for certain, but it's hinted that Kurt discovered the band when Australian tour promoter Stephen Pavlovic sent him the vinyl for She Hangs Brightly as a gift. Kurt mentions the present in the liner notes of the 1992 Nirvana compilation album Incesticide, alongside other things he found rewarding, including receiving the Raincoats debut album from the band members themselves, touring with Shonen Knife, and having the Vaselines reunite just to open for Nirvana on their Scottish tour dates. All things previously mentioned here on the Cobain 50 podcast. And fun fact for KEXP listeners, Stephen Pavlovic went on to form Modular Recordings, the indie record label that brought us music from Cut Copy, The Avalanches, and Tame Impala. Kurt's love of Mazzy Star also led him to the director Kevin Kerslake, who ended up working on 4 music videos for Nirvana. On his website, Kevin shared, quote, "Kurt once said to me, 'You made my favorite video of all time. Holla by Mazzy Star.'
Surely don't stay long.
And I was like, cool, I love that video too." He then asked me to make Nirvana's next video, which I agreed to do, and that was Come As You Are. The band was on every newsstand in the country by this point, and Kurt was really sick of that fact. So he said the only thing he wanted was to not be in the video. I obviously knew that was sort of a hurdle, especially since this was still the introductory phase of the band. So I tried to create some motifs that allowed them to be in the video without really being in it. I tried to figure out all sorts of ways to obscure their identity, knowing that their record label was going to want to put the faces of the band in the video. They were the tube of toothpaste, and you have to see the toothpaste in the ad. So the whole video was this dance of how we could obscure them, but see them at the same time." End quote. Kurt's connection to Mazzy Star continued when in 1993, David and Hope added musician Jill Emery to their lineup, a former bass player for Hole. She told Uncut Magazine, quote, "I went to their rehearsal studio. Everyone was so reserved. It was quite a shock coming from Hole with an aggressive Courtney Love. Strangely, their quietness matched Hole's abrasiveness, just on a different level." End quote. Jill stayed in the band through 1996. She Hangs Brightly proved a stunning introduction to the beauty Mazzy Star could create. Not only did it land on Kurt's 50 favorite albums list, but Pitchfork later ranked the album at number 29 on its list of the 30 best dream pop albums. Their 1993 follow-up album, So Tonight That I Might See, landed at number 2.
This is my 5-string serenade beneath the water of play. And while I'm playing for you, it could be raining there too.
David and Hope never expected the album's first single, Fade Into You, to blow up the way that it did. And the LP ended up going platinum here in the States. Naturally, the pressure was on for the next album, 1996's Among My Swan.
Before I let you down again, I just want to see you in your eyes.
Hope literally begged their label, Capitol Records, to be released from their contract, and the band went on hiatus the following year. In the years that followed, Hope made several guest vocal appearances on albums from the Chemical Brothers, Air, Death in Vegas, and funnily enough, the Jesus and Mary Chain, who she and David opened for when he asked her to sing at Opal back in 1987.
I gave you all I had. I gave you good and bad. I gave, but you just threw it back.
Hope started the band Hope Sandoval and the Warm Intentions in 2000 with the musician Kalamo Kisog, best known as the drummer for My Bloody Valentine. David moved to Norway and began working with local musicians there. He composed experimental music for films and installations. Meanwhile, he and Hope continued to write songs together, and in 2013, they released their fourth album, titled Seasons of Your Day.
I took that train into the city. You know, the one that goes under the bridge. I thought I was listening to a band play a song that shaded me.
Sadly, David Roback died from cancer in 2020 at the age of 61. There are currently no public plans to release the music that he and Hope had been recording on previous to his passing. In a 2020 interview with Uncut Magazine, his old bandmate Susanna Hoffs mentions that plans to release their early cassette recordings as The Unconscious or make the Rainy Day Project album available on streaming platforms were also put aside. Variety magazine reported that David and Kendra had been finalizing reissues of Opal's 2 albums and a compilation of early recordings, but unfortunately the reissues have since been withdrawn. Hope commented to Uncut that unreleased songs may eventually surface, commenting, quote, "Once our families inherit everything after we're dead and gone, I'm sure people will hear everything," end quote. On Facebook, Hope shared this poem shortly after David's death. I'll do my best to read it. What will we do now that you leave me here? Even though the dark blue sky is still radiant and filled with the comforting sadness that holds us together. What will we do now, as you've been embraced away? Did I stay behind and not notice? Did you leave a quiet message somewhere and I forgot to hear it? Good night, my beautiful friend. Please come back when the hour is sound.
That was Janice Headley digging into She Hangs Brightly by Mazzy Star. Again, we're talking in the intro about how iconic this band is and Hope Sandoval is. What were some of your first impressions of this album, Martin?
I gotta admit that I was well into adulthood when I listened to this particular album for the first time. Because like many people, my entry point to Mazzy Star was Fade Into You. Like,
yeah, of course.
But also, this is such a good album to contextualize the history of Mazzy Star and like really like get a feel for Hope Sandoval as a singer, because she is one of the more iconic singers of our time.
Definitely. It's an interesting one to go back to, because I think we'll talk more about that song later, but Fade Into You is so iconic, and I think people get in their minds a certain idea of what Mazzy Star is until you listen to this record, and like, yeah, there are some of those folkier elements, but it's also incredibly psychedelic. A really kind of trippy album, but subdued and in its trippiness.
Oh, absolutely. That's one of the things I noticed more profoundly than listening to, Mazzy Star's later stuff or Hope Sandoval and the Warm Intentions, is like that kind of psychedelic feel of this first album. It kind of reminds me of Beachwood Sparks in that like it's got kind of that like folk country element, but like really, really subtle psychedelic vibes.
Yeah, I think like of like Bill Callahan too a little bit.
Yeah.
For this like really like hushed but like subtly trippy. Like it's cool because when I think about psychedelic music a lot, I think, you know, the stereotypicals, the wow, so like out there and kind of obtuse, but you can be psychedelic in a really like quiet and calm kind of way too.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of this album reminds me of that, and it's very reminiscent of Nancy Sinatra's work with Lee Hazelwood. But also there's like this really great indie pop cover. It's Blue Flower is a cover, which I didn't know until researching this episode, by the European indie pop band Slap Happy. I mean, if you listen to Blue Flower, it sounds like it could be like a Pastel song or a Vaseline song. Yeah. So I was like, oh man, they're really good at this sound. And then I had to like look into it and like, oh, this is a cover.
That's amazing. I love those moments where like, this is a cover? Like if I could had a few of those on this series already.
Yeah.
And I love, you know, I think that's also partially a testament to Hope's voice as well. Like I feel like in the whole band, but the way she sings is so transformative.
Mm-hmm.
Like she embodies what she's singing, and even when I keep going to quiet and calm. That's maybe a disservice, but she really just is such a channel for the emotion. I saw her perform a few years ago at Desert Days with the Warm Intentions.
Nice.
And the whole band had lights on them except for her. And she was kind of shrouded in darkness, like singing these beautiful songs that seemed to drone on forever, but like in the best way. And just it feeling kind of like this like warm blanket of music coming across you. And there's certain vocalists who tap into something like ethereal or beyond, and I think she's one of those people.
Yeah, as the saying goes, still waters run deep. I think a lot about her cover of I'm Sailing. Shout out to Memphis Minnie. Like I've mentioned a couple times, I'm a blues guy now, so but like the fact that Hope Sandoval can take a blues standard with her particular voice and her set of skills, it kind of turns this blues song, this wailing blues song, into, she makes it her own. I think the intention of the song changes when you perform it a certain way. And Hope Sandoval may be one of the best singers ever who can do that.
Absolutely. And I feel like her and the band overall, we talk about again, like foundational blueprint type of bands. And I feel like Mazzy Star is one of those groups that kind of, maybe along with like Cocteau Twins on a different end of the spectrum, like broke dream pop for the masses. Like, do we have a band like Cigarettes After Sex without Mazzy Star or these sort of moodier, ethereal type of bands?
Yeah, I mean, one band that came to mind for me was Beach House.
Yeah.
Victoria LeGrand is one of those transformative singers in the way that Hope Sandoval is. And yeah, like it's a good question. Do you have Beach House without Mazzy Star?
Yeah, exactly. And it kind of like set this template of you can have so much power in having sonically dreamy, hazy sort of vibes.
Yeah.
It's vibes, as the youngins like to say.
Is this the first major label alternative album where vibes is a big component of it?
I feel like it's got to be up there if it's not the number one. Like I feel like this is the perfect music to find like when you're a teenager, like because it's just so the moodiness, like up there with Nirvana. But like you don't always want to. You're not always in that Nirvana type of mood.
Yeah.
Sometimes you want something a little more.
Sometimes you don't have the energy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the great way to put it. that I feel like, yeah, it's just so. I can imagine in my head like fan reels on TikTok of kids like discovering like Mazzy Star being like, whoa. But yeah, I do think that is a really good point that it set the template for vibes.
Yeah. While we are speaking on this album and Mazzy Star and Kurt, how do we think Mazzy Star might have impacted Kurt as an artist or even a person?
It's a good question because I feel like on the surface, like we were just kind of saying, like it's not sonically very similar aside from, you know, maybe some of the unplugged stuff or the quieter songs.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I think Kurt was also in his own way really good at creating a mood in a space. Hard to say Nirvana was vibes. But there is that similar abstractly, they are both highly emotive singers who are really good at tapping into an emotion. And I think sometimes they even tap into the same emotions in different ways, like longing or hurt or distress. And it's cool to see. Someone once told me, an artist I interviewed, that emotion is not volume. And that was a really, maybe seems obvious to some, but to me it was an eye-opening moment of like, being loud doesn't mean it's more intense. It just means it's louder. And I think they are both interpret that in different ways, that you can be just as powerful singing more hushed as you can having like a gravelly scream.
Yeah. You know, you're talking about emotion, and it made me think that it takes a reasonable level of emotional intelligence to tap in to emotion the way that Mazzy Star and Nirvana did in much different ways, but also kind of in similar ways. I think that the notion of emotional intelligence doesn't come up enough when we are talking about the great musicians of our time and all time. Because I think you have to have a certain awareness of the emotion that you're putting out there or the emotion you want to convey as an artist. And I do think that both Kurt and Hope Sandoval, particularly as singers, but I think in all forms of their musicianship, thought about the emotions that they are trying to convey.
Absolutely. And for what it's worth, you know, not everyone's into this, so we are, but Hope is a Cancer. Kurt was a Pisces.
Oh,
checks
yeah.
out to me.
Yeah, water signs.
Yeah.
Water sign energy.
Exactly.
To put a button on this episode, I think that She Hangs Brightly is a great and somewhat overlooked precursor to So Tonight That I May See, which is, like I said at the beginning of the episode, the entry point for a lot of Mazzy Star fans, myself included. And that comes on the back of one of the eternally great songs, Fade Into You.
Yeah. Well, we did this like mixtape day thing a few years ago. People shared their old mixtapes, and I think Mazzy Star Fade Into You was the most used song on mixtapes, ranging from cassette days to like Spotify playlists.
Wow.
That's the song. Like,
I mean, I could see it. It evokes a feeling that I think is hard to describe in any other way than by just showing it to a person.
Exactly. It's like, show this to your crush and they will understand how you feel.
Yeah.
I'd also give a shout out that album. So Tonight I Might See is so great too.
All right. Well, now it's time for us to fade out of this episode. This piece was produced by Janice Headley. Audio is mixed by Roddy Nikpour. Our podcast manager is Isabel Khalili, and Larry Mizell Jr. is our director of editorial.
And then another quick shout out to our Kia Ora celebration, celebrating Latin Heritage Month all through September 15th to October 15th. Big shout out to Albina Cabrera, who's been heading up that project. She does it every year, and Albina is a superstar, as we all know, especially if you're a listener to El Cancionero de Kurt, which you can subscribe to, our companion podcast. You hear Albina on our roundtables as well, digging into the history of Nirvana and Latin America. And programming like these podcasts and Kia Ora could not happen without you. We depend on your support to keep this going. You can become an amplifier or give a one-time donation. $6 a month or $20 as a one-time donation. Anything you can give always helps us. It helps support this independent journalism that we are doing on our editorial team and our podcast and all the storytelling we hear at KEXP. And you can also send that donation at kexp.org/Cobain to support the show. And with that, I'm Dusty Henry.
And I'm Martin Douglas. We'll see you next week on the Cobain 50 from listener-powered KEXP, where the music matters.
E pluribus Kurt.
Also, I forgot. I don't know where I'm going.
No, you're
with that
great.
point.